You are live. Well, hey friends. How are we going? I see a lot of comments in the chat asking why this time. Well, yeah, I wonder. Now it's our turn to have streams at reasonable hours. When I was teeing up the Mark IV to come over for review, I had a really good chat with Joe. And the only time we could figure out that worked for Australia and Australia and Czech, was 8 p.m. my time, and really early for him. And he'd just been up the whole previous day talking to other people because it was just after release. So yeah, Australia is like literally opposite to everyone else. But I figured I'd do a stream because this printer's made a bit of an impact. I don't think. Time delay. I assume everything's fine. Let me know if you guys have any stream issues. This machine, I don't think any of us saw it coming. I had made that video talking about the predictions for 2023 and sort of saying how the old guard had to stand up and take notice. And by old guard, I did mean Prusa Research as well, because the Mark III had been out since 2017. And yeah, it had been improved over that period of time, but when the Bamboo Lab X1 Carbon hit, yeah, that's a bit of a step up in terms of speed and capability. But little did we know that they'd been working on this thing for over a year in the background, in secret. So, you don't know what companies are up to, but it's pretty amazing they kept it quiet. When I was talking to Joe, I did ask how they kept it quiet, and apparently someone dumpster dived a test cube, that had Mark IV on it. And there was like a bit of a leak and theories from that. But overall, they kept it quiet, which is incredible. And they launched it with products ready to ship. So it wasn't a pre-order, which none of us saw coming. So that's pretty damn cool, I will say. So I'm going to pop this chat out. And the idea of this stream is to unbox it. Hopefully it survived. They had to try to re-deliver it a couple of times. And see how it is. And answer your questions. Because it's my goal to provide the most unbiased input on 3D printer recommendations on the internet. And I didn't pay for this. Joe did send it across free of charge for purpose of review. I have my review terms as with every 3D printer, and I will be thoroughly testing it. I will be producing a thorough in-depth review. I'll use it for a few projects if I like it, and eventually the cycle continues when it just finds itself out into the wilds and I donate it to another maker or a library or a school or something. That's sort of the cycle of 3D printers on this channel. They get thoroughly tested, reviewed, used if I like them, and then eventually donated. So it's going to be exactly the same for this. I'm looking forward to seeing what it's like. There's heaps of things that have changed in the Mark IV compared to the Mark III, especially like the die-cast frame parts. That's really, I tested out the Anchormake M5, and I was like, that die-cast is really unusual for a 3D printer. And then this has die-cast parts in it too. So that's pretty neat. So I'm going to pop this chat out. So I can see you guys. So let's see where you guys are from. So we've got Texas, UK, Alabama, South Africa, 2 a.m. Thank you for your dedication. That is very early. Belgium, yeah, I know it's getting quite late for a lot of people over in Europe. So don't stress. This will be recorded and kept up, so you can catch it afterwards. Pacific Northwest, and also some Aussies as well. Fantastic. So good to have you guys here. I really appreciate it. Let's get into it. Ontario, awesome. Let's see if I can just redo the focus. Not on me, on the box. Stop it. Stop it. There we go. It's trying to focus on me. Focus on the box. There we go. Oh, isn't it so good having like really what's the word for it? F-stop, really low f-stop lenses. Okay. I'm gonna move the mic, so I'm just gonna mute it for a second so you don't get horrible static. Okay. I have so little room. Like, there's no room in this this studio. There's too many synthesizers and too many boxes. Professional live streamer. No, I can't see the chat. Okay, there we go. Alright, well, let's get into it, shall we? It would help if I had a real knife. I just always have this turbine blade on hand. And I'm going to lose my iced coffee. Yeah, that coffee is going to go flying. A lot of the printers I review have this really sort of crappy packing tape, and this rips right through it, but Prusa uses fiber reinforced tape on their boxes. And it's a little bit harder to rip through. Oh, there we go. If you have any questions or comments, let me know. I'm going to try to watch the chat so I can see it, and I'll answer them as I go. What kind of music do I make? I just make my style of music. It's electronic. It varies from happy hardcore to synthwave to trying to do like hard style, but it's very difficult. But I just like playing my like old synths and things. It's like very relaxing to me. I am an industrial designer in Argentina. I wonder, as I think you do, if the cast frame is really important in this printer, or they could continue with traditional laser cut. Yeah, in their stream, I think Joe and the other guy, I've forgotten his name, I'm sorry, were saying that the cast aluminium wasn't exactly necessary, but it adds stiffness, but the original was still stiff enough. I wonder if it was a shift because manufacturing cast parts is in bulk easier than laser cut. I don't know, but I'm really keen to see it either way because it's got some really nice pocketing. Okay. Thank you for purchasing your original Prusa MK4. I didn't purchase it, but I appreciate the sentiment. Thing about the Prusa printers is the incredible manual. There you go. Probably the best manual that printers come with in terms of detail. The Soval SV06 I reviewed recently had a really good manual as well, but this is like a little book. And I know a lot of people don't care for manuals anymore, but when you have a printer in a school or university environment or somewhere you just need to have something in paper on hand in front of the printer, it does make a difference. And this is a brand new printer, so I'm going to have to reference this manual because there's so many things different in this compared to the Mark III. Matt Lamb, can you find my music anywhere? Yeah, if you just search Makers Muse SoundCloud, you'll find some of it, but a lot of it doesn't get finished. Alright, we've got an Australian power cord, excellent. Gummy bears, as always. I'm facing the microphone like it's a camera. That's how early it is. I'm sorry. Gummy bears. Gummy bears. Vorons have good manuals. Good to know. They're quite complex. machines, so they would need manuals. And yeah, this table sucks. There's no room for a real table here, so it has to be a standing desk, which just wobbles, and it is what it is. Until I get like more space, which isn't going to happen anytime soon. Steel sheet, satin steel sheet, and steel sheet TXT. So I'm assuming we've got the powder coated sheet, the clear PEI, the smooth PEI, and then just PEI adhesive on top. So on the Mark III, I usually just print with the textured PEI since I got it in 2017 or 2018. So I'm probably gonna start with that, but we'll see what the manual recommends. Good foam. All right. I'm gonna put this on the floor. Pull it out. It looks like it hasn't suffered any shipping damage, which is good. And there goes the table. That's why it's so wobbly. All right. What's my opinion on the Ender 3 V2 Neo? My opinion is Creality has too many printers and too many Ender 3 variations. So I don't know too much about the Neo actually. I like the S1, I think, at the moment, because it's got the direct drive extruder, the auto bed leveling, and the 32-bit control board. But I don't actually really know the specs off the top of my head what the Neo has. I just think Creality needs to discontinue some printers to then make more printers, if that makes sense. Okay, let's bring this up. It's so wobbly. Little close-up camera. Alrighty. So, this is the Mark IV. It's clearly been tested, which is good. That's something that Prusa always does with their printers. The stock PEI adhesive sheet has the test model stuck down. Looks pretty good. The first layer under the text looks I mean, the silver filament makes things look a bit weird, but it looks kind of like a little bit a texture. I don't know how to describe it. I think it's just because the infill's directly 90 degrees from the print. And there's still a ton of 3D printed parts, but there's that. I'll bring the camera even closer. How do I do this? It's so tiny. Yeah, it does look pretty small actually. For a bed slinger, it's small-ish. You guys can't see that at all. No, not really. One day I'll have a real streaming setup. Anyway, there you go. So it's got all the pocketing. So all of this is cast. This whole frame top piece, it's no longer laser cut. It's one big cast piece, which is fascinating because it's hard to make cast parts that are quite thin and like how does without warping. I think when you have metal that's cooling down, it wants to expand and contract, and Oh, it does go all the way to the bottom. So it is literally, yeah. So it's a big square of cast aluminium. Because I've seen the pictures, but seeing it in person is really something else. It's the metal alloy that's used for casting tends to be more like harder and a little bit more brittle than machined aluminium. It's got magnesium in it usually. It does. It's doing a really scientific like sound test, but it does seem to have a more higher pitch noise, which tells me that it's more rigid. But yeah, I don't. It could all be just nothing. It does feel very rigid though. Like back in the day, you get an i3 and you do this on the top rails, and the whole thing would move. This is just the table moving. Like there is no movement at all with this. What's the weight? I'd say exactly the same as the Mark III. Like, it's super rigid, guys. It's not as heavy as the Anchormake M5. That's really heavy. But, yeah, it's not too bad. It's very manageable in terms of weight, but it feels solid. It does feel solid. Alright, let's get the power cord. Printer is more rigid than my bench. Yep, you ain't wrong there. The thing about 3D printers when they're going fast is they can easily hit resonances on even good benches. Now this is terrible, absolutely, but I've got a really good workbench downstairs. And when the X1 and P1P were printing on it for the B-roll for that video, there were certain resonances they would hit with the table that the table would start moving, even though it was really solid, like thick wood. Which is terrifying. So I think at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if the surface is moving as long as the printer itself is rigid. The axes are rigid to each other. And once again, cardboard boxes everywhere. Because I think a little bit of movement in the surface actually does good to dampen down vibrations. And I've even done a test hanging a printer from wires, and it didn't care. The print quality was indistinguishable. Everything is tangled. Alrighty. So I did notice that the power supply doesn't have a voltage switch. It just says 250 volts on the side. So I don't know if it's one that can switch automatically, but I would definitely check yours before you plug it in, because you know, obviously voltages are different across the countries, and in Australia, if you plug in a 120 or 110, whatever, volt AC thing into the wall, it's going to blow it up. Alright, got some filament. Alright. Now I'm going to deal with this. So now I can't leave the room. Alright, we got some filament, which is nice, and a box of stuff. So you can look at that with that camera, I suppose. Yeah, the power supply auto detects. Yeah, so it should. A printer at this price point should have everything done to make it as easy to use as possible, including a good power supply. So I seem to remember the Mark III one also auto adjusted. Okay, we've got some bits. So we've got filament guide add-on. We have the USB drive. Some people were saying online that the USB drives had died, which was interesting. It's possible there was a bad batch. I'll definitely keep everyone updated how mine goes. Some screws, tools. This camera's kind of useless, isn't it? I'm just going to get rid of this little camera because it's not actually helping. I've had that C920 since I started YouTube back in 2015, and it's kind of not acceptable anymore. Some good tools. Okay, what's the cast date on the frame? That's a good question. Need some light. I don't know how to read it. So there's it says 22, and there's all dots except 2. 2 of the spaces have no dots. I'm a bit too blind to read how many dots there is right now. Right, let's turn them on. Oh wait, I need to turn. No, there it is. So there's no shipping locks or anything, which is cool. Okay, I need to come around your side to see this. Alrighty. This is your original Prusa MK4. Self-test. Okay, I'm assuming it will ask me to remove the test print. Okay, it didn't. We'll see what happens. Yeah, everything about this printer is Joe. So it says Prusa on it. There's a picture of him on the front. It's the original Prusa MK4. Spool holders in the box. Yeah, okay. Give me a sec. Okay. I just took it off quickly anyway, just to be sure. Cast date is October 2022. Yeah, I think you're right, actually. I remember people saying that theirs was October as well. I'll read up on how to actually read it later. Alright, load cell. You'll need your help with this test. You're asked to tap the nozzle. Don't worry, it's going to be cold. Okay. Tap. Okay. Imagine if he just trolled us and like heated the nozzle to like 200 degrees and is like, please tap the nozzle to help us. Alright, it's doing its thing. It's a lot quieter than, well, I don't know if any of you remember the Mark II. That was crazy loud. The Mark III was a lot quieter than that, but still not super quiet. This is a lot quieter, but not as quiet as like I reviewed the BQ Huracan recently, running Stealth Chop on the stepper motors, stepper drivers, and that was almost, you couldn't even tell it was on. So it's not crazy quiet. It's not the quietest printer I've ever tested, but it's probably the quietest Prusa I've ever tested. That makes sense. Yeah, that Z, the Z is quite loud. Yeah, that Z is the loudest part, I think. And if I remember correctly, it's because the Z's not running the fancy new motors, I think, with the VFA reduction, which is a big thing in the Prusa Mark III. Jesse really screwed his unboxing by having the mic sitting on the same table as the printer. Yeah, I've just got a pencil condenser here, which I apologize if I move out of the range of it. You can't really hear it very well, but it's easy. And it's what I use for most things. Okay, what's he say? That's heating up the nozzle. Do I recommend having your printer on a sturdy desk like this? Oh, you mean like a desk like this? Honestly, I have never had an issue with having a printer on any kind of crap desk. The only problem you run into is some of the really, like the lac tables from IKEA, is they can act like resonance chambers where they will amplify the motor's vibrations to make it even louder. But in that case, you just have a concrete tile and some EVA foam, like a gym mat, EVA square, and a concrete tile, and they put the printer on that, and it deadens all those vibrations. So you can have the crappiest table in the world. You just do that with a $1 or $10 tile or whatever, and it cuts down the sound a lot. The screen's gone blank. I don't know if that's good or bad. Oh. The screen is just flashing. Is that normal? I'll leave it for another minute. I'll get some confirmation from you guys. And I'll consult the manual. Flashing is not normal. Excellent. Flashing screen firmware? No, I don't think it's flashing screen firmware. Yeah, alright. We're turning it off and on again. Power plug. Yeah, look, the power plug might be a little bit loose. I'll double check it. It's not the best setup. Let's try that again, shall we? Oh, we're back. I don't know what that was about. It might have, the flashing indicates the screen flashing function works. Japman, thank you so much. And Thalen, geez, you guys don't have to donate anything. This is just chill. This is just a chill stream, but thank you. It's awesome. I did shake the table. Yeah, well, this came all the way from Prague in a box, so I think you can handle that. So it's booting, and then it's just doing this. Would it fix the screen if I dumped my coffee on it? I mean, if it's downloading firmware, it should just say on the screen downloading firmware. And it's like, it can't download firmware because it's not connected to the Wi-Fi. Check the wires. Suppose I can. Problem is it shows the boot. It shows the boot image. I don't know what to do. We can try cycling it, and then I can try connecting it over serial to see if we can move it. Yeah, I could do that. I can plug it into USB. I'll do what you all suggest. All right, let's do that. Okay. All right. We'll start with the ribbon cable. Now, you don't have to select the voltage. It automatically selects on the power supply. Okay. Ribbon cable looks good. No problem there. Got a little grounding wire right to the front, which is interesting. Not exactly how I intended to spend my morning. It's booting and the power supply can't keep up. No, sorry, I might have misspoke. I don't think it's automatic voltage selection. It just says 250. People said automatic. I don't know. I've never had an issue with power supplies and Prusa printers before. I don't think that's the issue here. It's running their new control board and firmware, so it's possible it's soft bricked. It's also possible that it just wants to update and do its thing for ages. Like the Huracan would do its thing for like a minute. I can connect it to the network, that's no problem. Alright. I can flash the firmware, I'm just not going to do it on stream. See, look, okay, he's back. So maybe it was just a bad cable. I did barely nothing. I like poked it. If that's it, I'm gonna be really happy. Alright guys, I don't know what that was. I don't know if it was just I literally just poked it. It might have been a little bit loose. If it was, awesome. That's an easy fix. Flip the switch to 110. So, while this is doing its thing, hopefully it works. Fun story, back in school, some of the kids who were naughty would go around to the computers and the power supplies and flick the switches to 110. And so when people came in the morning to turn the computers on in the library, they'd blow up. And then so the IT staff had to epoxy over the voltage selectors to stop that ever happening again. It's terrible, but it's so funny. Alright, gonna do this little pokey poke again. Nice. If you don't succeed, try again. Literally, so much of 3D printing and tech in general is just turning it off and on again repeatedly and hoping that it starts working again. Shivel, someone did that in my computer lab. 30 computers all failed. Yeah, I think it was a thing kids did because they thought it was funny. Same with degaussing CRTs. Do you guys remember like this? Okay, I'm really showing my age, but the satisfaction of degaussing a screen that hadn't been degaussed for like ages, and the big like dunk it did. People kept stealing the balls from the mice. Yeah, they did it to mine as well. All right, it's heating. The Mark did miss a diode, so moving the bed manually can insert a spike into the controller, causing it to fail. Interesting. That's unlike a team over at Prusa to miss a back-driven diode. I don't know what you'd call it to stop that back drive current. But yeah, I've never been a fan of people moving beds and being like, look, the screen's on. That's not good for your electronics. They should use female mice, no balls. I don't know. The first laser mount mice were so bad that you actually preferred to use ball mice. But the problem is they did epoxy them in place, so you couldn't take the balls, and then they just fill up with gunk, so they become like crunchy, awful. All right, looking good. We're back on track. So if your Prusa Mark IV has a flickery screen, it's probably the cable. Have we touched the untruth by Prusa input shaper? I haven't investigated. I've heard stuff about the input shaping nature of this printer. But yeah, B-Finger, that's a good point. I will definitely investigate properly for my review and get an idea of what's going on there. I've degaussed a ship. We weren't allowed to have CRTs in during that process. Would have wrecked them. That's terrifying. Alright. Alright, it wants filament. Let's load in some filament. People asking me what type of PLAs and filaments I recommend. I don't really have any brand allegiance, so I tend to buy what's cheapest. Problem is everything I say, like it's like, oh yeah, recommended. I'm not in America, so I can't recommend American filament, but I hear a lot of people just buy Hatchbox, which supposedly is good. eSun's always been good. That's like super old school brands and fairly affordable. Here in Australia, I go to InkStation and buy their non-branded PLA because it's the cheapest in the country. Because I'm cheap. And it prints fine. I have no issue with it. Yeah, but none of the cheap ones do stuff like this. This is the black, sparkly, galaxy black. This is lovely filament. It hides imperfections really well, but it's lovely. No way, does Zyro still exist? Back in, when I was at the 3D printing studio back in 2014, we were looking at companies to not drop ship, to white label filament for us. And it was like Superstar, Zyro, eSun, a couple of others. I think we went with Zyro in the end for the first batch. It was actually really good filament. So I'm glad to hear they're still around. Inkstation filament is Sunlu. Well, there you go. It's cheap. It works. This is a cool spool. That's a funky spool. Still plastic, but a nice spool. And the wind. The wind is awesome. Okay. Okay, so he wants some filament. Again, just no space anywhere. This wind is so tight, I can't find the end of it. Ah, there it is. That's crazy. There's a channel in the side of the spool. I haven't used Prusa filament for a while. There's a channel in the side of the spool to hold the end of the filament. Mad. And now I'm going to ruin the wind by doing this test. Alright, I'm going to do a quick unload. Take this out, do this test. Apologies, it's hard to stream and set up a printer at the same time, but I'm having fun. I hope you guys are having fun too. The spool holder add-on, yes. While it's warming up, I'll do that. I would buy more Prusa if it didn't cost a fortune to ship from across the world. Satisfying. Interestingly enough, these are injection molded parts, and I remember for the Mark III they couldn't get enough stuff printed to make like the printed spool holders, so they started injection molding the spool holder, and it's like you could injection mold more things. Like, you could injection mold more of this printer, but they choose not to because it's like their mantra to have the print farm and everything's 3D printed as much as possible. It's really, it's I gotta give Prusa Research credit. It's their differentiating factor, right? Like, you could print these pieces. I'm not sure if they released the files, the source files yet from the Mark IV, but like, I'm assuming soon, at least if not now, you can just print spare parts for your own printer. And that's getting harder and harder to find. Like, we all, you know, I love printers that just work and they're fast and you can print cool materials. But, like, oh, I didn't know it was waiting for me. Sorry guys. But yeah, like the Bamboo Lab X1, there's no user serviceable bits on it at all, really. So, it's nice to see someone still keeping up the original rep dream of something that you can repair while still being good. You got to be able to print them because they break. I don't think I've ever had any part of a Prusa printer break, but I don't super flog mine. Like, I know a lot of people have them in a print farm going for thousands of hours. I don't know how they'd break unless you dropped it. Like, how would this break? Okay. Nice withdrawal routine, bro. Oh, there we go. I spoke too soon. I've been testing so many printers lately that just withdraw the filament slowly and cause a plug. I retract that. I was too early to criticize. But yeah, recently I've been testing printers that just slowly pull filament out, like the Anker Make M5, and they form a plug, and it's really annoying. But that was fine. So let's load some filament in. Probably breaking the enclosure, it's PETG. Yeah, but the enclosure is also 3D printed for a lot of it. Yeah, it could deform in the enclosure. I'm still testing it. Like, I did get sent a Mark III S Plus and the enclosure to test, which I've been very slow on, and I do apologize for them to the team over at Prusa Research. But then this came out, so now I can do a side-by-side comparison. I'm going to move the camera up just a tiny bit so you can see a bit better. Oop. Is it too high now? Oh well. Insert the filament. What? Oh, that was it. Okay. I thought it was going to start extruding. Remove the filament to finish. I have no idea. Again, it's really hard to know how to set up a printer when you can't see the screen while it wants to set up. Is a nozzle hardened steel? I don't think so. Sent to the spool holder. Is it upsetting your OCD? Is it upsetting your OCD? Sorry, I shouldn't make fun of that. There you go. It's technically centered now because this is centered. Alright, what's next? Right, alright, well that's set up finally. I'm just going to move this a little bit so I can get around to it. It seemed, yeah, the sensor calibration I think I did wrong, but it seemed to be okay when I pushed it out and put it back in. I think it's just checking to see if it can detect filament. Alright. USB. Alright, let's load some filament. Very beepy machine. Is that Coffee Farmers Union? No, it's cheap. It's cheap instant coffee and milk. Have I tried making my own enclosure? So, no. But I used to print with printers in their original boxes back when I was printing on demand with open frame printers trying to print ABS. But the issue is if they overheat, then they can break, but they can also catch fire. And a box made out of polystyrene and cardboard and wood catching fire isn't great. So what's interesting in the Prusa enclosure is they've included this like fire suppressant tube extinguisher thing. Apparently they're used in race cars under the hood, and it's just like it sort of passively waits until the temperature inside gets too high, and then it will dump this special chemical into the chamber and extinguish it. So I would say that if anyone wants to have an enclosure that's safe, look into some sort of extinguishing system in case something goes wrong, and maybe like a power disconnect, something so it can disconnect the power if it detects a issue. I don't know. It's always been a concern to me that enclosures are basically the perfect tinder for like a printer fire. Alright, let's load him up. No. Don't know why it's not extruding. This is the weird thing coming from like dumb printers to ones that are kind of smart, is I would just press extrude now and it would extrude, but now it's loading filament, but it's not doing anything. Blaze cut, that's the one. Thank you, Moist Bread. that's the system I was talking about. But yeah, they're not cheap, that's the issue. What have I done? Recalibrate the filament sensor. Yeah, I think you're right. I just disabled it for now. I will recalibrate it. Yeah, I think I calibrated the sensor to be inverse, so it was backwards. Nah, it's all good. I've just made it a bit stupider for now, just so I can get it printing. So people were saying with the pressure, the load cell, that it leaves a dimple on the print bed. So I'm going to investigate that. And I can't see anything from the factory. It has only done one print, to be fair. But we'll see when we do the print if it does leave an impression. Because I've seen some people online discuss that. Even though it's not heated up fully, it can still leave a mark. Alright, so people were saying that I shouldn't print the default files because they're too big. Is there a file on there that's not too big? Like a Benchy or something? Seven hours, 1 hour 30. Front left corner. Yeah, that's what I thought. I can't see any dimples in the front left corner of the bed. Yeah, the whistle's a good idea, actually. Let's do that. The rocket engine's 13 hours. Keychain? Is that... I can't see a whistle, I can see a keychain. Let's try that. Let's give that a go. This has taken too long, I apologize. My Mark IV appears to be squawking. Yeah, they're not cockatoos, surprisingly enough. We've had a lot of crows recently. And I don't know if that's just seasonal or if they've just had a really good breeding season, but they are congregating outside a lot. And magpies. They had a really good breeding season too, so there's a lot of magpies now. Cool. Yeah, so people are saying that the control board's open source and there's already Gerber files. Nice. Yeah. Yeah, this is like... Sorry. When I do these streams, it's literally like I haven't opened it, the box was sealed, and I've tested printers like this on streams that have been dropped in factory, that just didn't work, that had all sorts of problems, so it's always longer to unbox and stream. But if that's the only issue I have with the screen being a little bit buggy, at least you know if that happens to you, it's that. Then I'll be happy. I've got a whole pile of cardboard in the corner to deal with now. And once again, I forgot that this printer wants you to confirm everything, so I didn't press print. That's something that really annoys me, to be honest. Like, it's an unnecessary step. Like, I selected the file. I want it to print. It's the same with the Anchor M5. There's just like another step to print that I kept missing and just walking away. Okay, I understand. Thank you, Beefingert, for your forensics work. Yeah. Do you want it print? Really? Really? Are you sure? Yeah, 100%. It's like that. It's nice to have a USB stick though, finally. We're moving up in the world from 8GB SD cards. Finally. What was the filament guide thing that came with it for? It's probably important, but I haven't fitted it. The manual did ask me to clean the print bed with isopropyl, which I haven't done, but it's been in a box. I haven't touched it. It should be fine, right? That's usually my go-to method for cleaning print beds, is just isopropyl and glue stick, like I said in my latest video. Previous video, not latest. Did I get a dot in my sheet? Not that I can see. Alright, now it's doing its thing. Right. That's pretty cool. So it's not the first printer in the world to use like force feedback for bed leveling. But it does it quite elegantly. The filament guide keeps the filament from coming off the spool on the new spools. Well, maybe the new spools shouldn't have an unspooling problem. Seems like a bit of a patch to me. But I'll keep an eye on it. Okay, you only get the dot after a lot of prints. Well, that makes sense. It's like if you print something in the same spot again and again and again, you'll get a mark. It is, you are printing on a plastic surface after all. Alright, he's off. So I did like how it only bed leveled in the print area. That's something I haven't seen before. And that saves a lot of time. It only did that, what, 4 points or something? Whereas if you do the whole bed, it's like 7 by 7 or something. It takes a lot longer. Yeah, that's quite neat. I'm pretty keen to play with the nozzles as well. Like, it's interesting that they've gone completely in-house now for their printing, their extruder, nozzles, all that design. They're kind of finally disconnected fully from other brands, I suppose. Yeah, but I don't think they're ever going to become... this may be quoted in the future. I don't think they're ever going to become MakerBot. You know, like how they went from, you know, the community's open source advocate to closed source stabbing the community in the back. Like, obviously, Prusa Research needs to protect itself because it's put a lot of innovation into making this machine. And look, some of it's attributed to other things, absolutely. But it's, you can't run a business if someone else just takes all of your R&D straight away. So I'm not sure how they're going to stand up to this new force of like you saw you guys saw a Creality printer that came out, the K1. It's essentially the same as the Bamboo Lab printer. I haven't seen it in person, but I've seen the renders of it. It's crazy. Can I set the other webcam up for it? Yes, I can, sure. It's just the same size. I can make it bigger. Professional live streamer. It's like at a tilt now. I don't have any streamy helpers. Yeah, this shirt's from, oh, what's it called? It's in the UK. I can't remember. Cyberdog, that's the one. In the UK, there's a store called Cyberdog. My sister was there for a few years, and they sell awesome shirts. Right, so he's doing his thing. Pretty fast for a bed slinger. His rapids are pretty good. Not the quietest printer. This looks so slow. Man, like, if you would have seen the printers from like 4 years ago even, this is like light speed. Like, it's ridiculous that the speed jumps we've seen just in the last couple of years are just mind-blowing. I used to print first layers at 15 millimeters a second because otherwise you wouldn't get good bed adhesion. And I am team speed. I want stuff to be printed ASAP so I can finish my projects quicker, but I also want them to be reliable. So there's like a sweet spot. And like the Bamboo one, the Bamboo Lab X1 Carbon absolutely has hit that sweet spot. But again, if everything works, if something breaks in that complex tool chain, then we've got a problem. If this keeps working, I'll be happy, even if it's a little bit slower. But yeah, it has to be reliable. That's like number one. Reliability, speed, features, I guess. I don't even give a crap about most features as long as like the prints are reliable, and printing fast is nice. Yeah, there you go. NLT MW. Never let the machines win. Yeah, accuracy, speed, and reliability is accuracy and reliability is much more important than speed to me. Yeah, no, this isn't the fastest bed slinger. The as much as everyone doesn't like the company, and I do get it. The Anchormake M5, the latest firmware, is really fast, like stupidly fast for a bed slinger. And they've done all sorts of things to make it really rigid with a huge die-cast aluminium base and big Y-axis motor for that bed. I did have a lot of issues with linear advance with that machine to get there was like blobbing in the corner, like the corners are bulging a bit. So I still haven't nailed that as much as I like, but that printer can go fast for a bed slinger. This is pretty slow, and yeah, as Beef Ingot has said, yeah, it actually is quite slow for various reasons. So I will investigate that. But there's no 15-minute benchy on the G code, that's for sure. Not yet, anyway. Let's see if I can correct this camera one more time. How's that? Everything's backwards, so it keeps confusing me. That's pretty good. That works. So Nero did a 27-minute benchy. That's pretty good. I mean, considering the benchy is usually over an hour on the old Mark III, it's not bad. I could test print recovery. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Let's give it a go. All right. 3, 2, 1. Oh, that's cool. So it's got a little bit of extra power just to park itself. All right. Let's fire it back up. All right. Yeah, there you go. It's just homing, figuring out where it is, recovering. Yeah, you guys threw me again. I thought it was actually saying, "Do you want to? Are you sure you want to continue your print that the power was lost to?" No, it's doing it all by itself. It is doing it by itself. And it's back. There you go. Yeah. I mean, I don't know why you want to see the screen. There's not really anything on it. Cool. Yeah, that's actually pretty good. So they've refined that from the previous version, but the fact it has enough energy to park itself before it dies is something that I don't really see very often. Usually printers just stop and the filament cools and like welds the print head to the part. So when you resume, it like rips the print off. I remember testing power recovery on like it might have been a Tronxy or something ages ago. And yeah, like it would home before heating the hot end. The sequence made no sense. So the print was this high and it like just homed with the print head cooled onto it and just ripped it off the print bed. Oh, okay, that makes sense. If it sits too long and cools down, the print is considered failed. That's cool. So, I mean, that makes sense for this sort of print surface because PEI, when it's cooled, it will release the part. So yeah, that's pretty cool that it can actually keep track of that. Does the Bambu Lab X1C also have recovery? It does. I haven't used it myself, but yes. So okay, so it's good for brownouts. I would say if you suffer from brownouts, though, you probably want an uninterruptible power supply. Just a small one. They're cheapish secondhand, and they usually got sealed lead acid batteries in them. So I don't know how well they'd last secondhand, but they're cheapish. They're just really heavy, and you get one that would keep like a computer on for 5 minutes. Would probably be good for this, getting you through brownouts if you get short brownouts. I know there's some IT guys in the chat who would give you better advice than that. I've been meaning to get a UPS for some of my other gear, but the power recovery worked totally fine, especially because we've got solar. So sometimes there's I don't know if it's like glitches. Yeah, like our solar's good, but sometimes people have issues with the solar changing over. I'm rambling. Am I implying the Bambu Lab is less reliable? Not really. I've had 2 failures on the Bambu Lab, and that's from the first layer being too small. The issue with the bamboo layout printers is if something does go wrong, how do you fix it? You can't. Um, it's not a it's a printer as a tool, not a printer as a hobby. Like, and it's a printer as a inkjet printer. Like, if something goes wrong with your inkjet printer, do you fix it? No, you take it back for warranty. The issue is the warranty is back in China, and there is some resellers popping up, but like people have mentioned the carbon rails, the rods in the X1C and the P1P aren't user serviceable. So, I mean, they're going to wear out eventually, right? Like, they're not like, cast case hardened steel, um, which even does wear out eventually. Takes a long time, but you could just replace these rods in 10 minutes. I wish I could do that with the X1C. Fusionable. When did I start 3D printing? I don't remember. That's been so long. When I was studying industrial design, we had access. We could use Stratasys Dimension 3D printers, which are the size of a fridge. They're about $80,000 Australian each, something like that. Like a print, like yay big hollow would be like $100, $200 of material alone. They wouldn't even charge us an excess. Like on top of that, that was just the raw cost. So I got my first personal 3D printer in 2012, which was the Up Mini, which I still have, and it still works. It's actually surprisingly good. It's held up. I looked at some prints that I did back then compared to now, and they're not bad. They're really not bad. It printed in their weird ABS polycarbonate blend at 270 degrees C. They're onto something early on. Tier time was quite ahead of the game then. But yeah, 2012 was when I got my first 3D printer, but I'd been using it for years before then. And then here we are now. So I've seen pretty much every incarnation of filament 3D printers there is. Yeah, that's not very fast at all, is it? I will investigate how to make this quicker. If I have another color handy, try switching the color mid-print by pausing and changing filament. It's almost finished, but I could try. Let's give that a go. I have filament somewhere in here. Yellow? Let's go with yellow. Alright. Oh, is it so weird that PLA goes brittle when it's in storage like that? Yeah, so the tier time 3D printers had a blend of PLA that printed hotter than normal. Sorry, a blend of ABS that printed hotter than normal ABS. So if you tried to print ABS from any other manufacturer, the prints were garbage. The supports would weld to it, stuff like that, because you couldn't change the temperature. Yeah, so backwards. And their slicer was locked down. It's their own thing. It worked, but we were getting to the stage where like open source stuff like Slicer and Cura was becoming a thing. It became increasingly painful to use. So what we would do is wire resistors in line with the thermistor to trick the software, the control board, to thinking that it was already hotter than it was. So I had little dip switches and resistors. So I could print at a lower temperature to print cheap ABS, because up ABS was really expensive, like $70 Australian for like 700 grams, stuff like that. So yeah, that's what we had to do, but it worked really well. All right, purge more. Alex, thank you. I love the channel, been watching for years. I have a CR10S Pro V2. Cannot get a good print out of. Any ideas to why? That is a really open-ended question because it could be anything. The first things to check is your first layer correct? From the bed, is it leveled correctly? Are the prints falling off it? That's why they're failing, or are they failing halfway through? There's so many variables. So I would try to make sure the first layer is correct first, and then go from there, and then troubleshoot as you go. Alright, let's see if this works. Yeah, getting the first layer correct is like the first hurdle for any filament-based 3D printer, and resin. But that's why I like this sort of stuff. It just takes that step away from it. It does the bed leveling and the nozzle height for you. Yeah, WRX Subaru. If Prusa were to go closed source, they'd probably go out of business. I think they've learnt from MakerBot in terms of how the community responds to that move. So, a bit of history. MakerBot wasn't the first low-cost 3D printer, but they were one of the first available kits you could get, with the Cupcake CNC and then the replicator. But then they became, this is during the hype of 3D printing, like, everyone was talking about it, and everyone's trying to make money out of it. MakerBot got bought by Stratasys, and the printers went from like a community thing to a closed source, behind closed doors corporate thing. And like, they're still used in schools and things. Like, it's not like they failed, but they lost all of that community support, which, you know, return. Sorry. That really is important. I think having your community rally behind you is partly why Prusa's, you know, able to release this printer now so successfully, because they have that reputation behind them, and it's easy to lose that really quickly. I've seen a lot of people on YouTube, you know, lose their reputation by doing something that goes against, you know, their community, and it goes like that. Thank you for whoever said clean the tip. I noticed it was just oozing a bit then. It's hurting Cheedy currently, or Keedy Tech. I don't know exactly how to say it. Keedy Tech's an interesting company. They're one of the first companies to send me a printer for review, and it was like a MakerBot replicator style machine that was made out of sheet steel. I loved it. It was awesome. But I don't know. Like, they've always been 90% there. And the last few printers I took for review from them had some really weird decisions. And they've got this new machine that's competing with the Bambu Lab X1C and that. And they really want to review. But I'm not going to do it. I've already reviewed the X Max. And I think, yeah, they've got really good customer support as well, but I'm going to let some other creators navigate that, because I almost guarantee there'll be a few teething issues with the first few batch of printers. Oh, it was almost done. Oh dear. Well, that filament change kind of sucked because it was oozing and then it didn't do a pre-extrude, so it's like a little under-extruded a little bit. Yeah, I can't take it off while it's hot. But I think it would have been fine if I did it with a proper G-code. Lost in Tech already reviewed it. Your turn. Yeah, no. I'll just send people to your review then. I'm like being a reviewer is a really interesting space because companies want to send you machines ASAP, but a review is baked in stone once it's released. You can't edit a YouTube video. Like, you can cut bits out, but you can't add annotations anymore. You can't change anything. So I have to tell these companies, look, you send me something, it's going to be what the review is of. You can't send me a printer that's crap with firmware bugs and, you know, quality control issues, and then tell me, oh, but the production units are different, because that's completely pointless. So it's this constant battle of they want it really soon and they want it to be amazing so they can sell machines, and they send you garbage because it's not ready for production. And I'm not interested in being their quality control and R&D for free. It's a review, right? So it's a constant battle, and eventually, eventually you sort of don't want to do reviews anymore. So I've been very picky with reviews because there's been a few, and like I'm very honest in my reviews, that just haven't gone very well because there's been various issues that are very early. And they've been like, oh, but we'll send you a new printer that's fixed it. Yeah, not so much lately, but that's only because I've been taking less reviews on. Thanks, Nathan. I appreciate you sharing that accident with the world. Man, I did a thing, is just... He doesn't know what he started. If you Google that, if you Google my name, it's like a suggestion on Google. Have any companies threatened to sue after a review? Not sue, but they've slagged me off publicly. It's really funny actually because there's this cycle where a company will get a bad review, they'll lose their minds. The first thing they do is like say like, oh please, we didn't expect this, take it down, and then they might get a bit more aggressive about it. I've had one years ago, I'm not going to say the name, people who have been subscribed for ages will remember, changed their AliExpress page to like, oh, made this unfair review. Everything's been changed since then. We just sent the machine to him to help us test it. Rubbish like that. But then they eventually start begging and like, they'll try to join my Patreon back when I had it and stuff like that. And then eventually I'll get an email saying, hey, from X company, we'd love you to review our printer, which is the same company that like lost their mind, which tells me that their staff has cycled to the point where it's new staff and they've forgotten that it sent me a machine years ago that I said was terrible and they want to send me a new machine. Fun times. This is like the stuff you only like experience after running a channel like this for years. It's absolutely crazy. Joe the Pope, thoughts on Prusa MK4 versus Bamboo P1P for a mechanical engineering student? Is that what you said? That wants a nicer printer than an Ender 3 V2. I think either would get you there. The Bamboo P1P is a better price point for what you get. The only issue is it's got that kind of unfinished look to it, but I don't think you'd care. As an engineering student, you'd pretty like to see the sheet metal components, which are very good on that machine. And you probably don't have much time and you just want something that works. So out of the box, providing it hasn't got any quality control issues, it will just work. But I will preface that by saying that my P1P is currently out of action because I moved it and I wasn't super gentle with it, and now the bed leveling doesn't work. And I think one of the pressure areas is loose, something like that. I haven't had time to look into it. It's probably my fault because I was a little bit rough moving it because they're a little bit unwieldy. But yeah, repairing them is currently very difficult if you need to. Alright, pop this guy off. Easy. Easy as. Ta-da. It's not going to focus. Focus on this one. Whoop. Yeah. Not exactly the most challenging print, and where I changed the filament is a little bit under extruded, but the Galaxy Black's gorgeous. What's my favorite print bed sheet type? Have you watched my videos? I like G10, Garolite. It's just, where I get it from. It's like a knife supply store. It's cheap, it's affordable, and I heat it up, and as long as it's clean, I heat it up and it prints really well, and releases cleanly. That looks like crap. Yeah, where I did the filament change, it was under extruded. But yeah, I really like Garolite, which is a fiberglass composite, and it's just like cheap basically. Um, yeah, Garolite and G10 and grey filament. Yeah, Etch-A-Tech has got my number. Um, I'm just gonna put another print on and just move it across and then sit down and then we can answer some questions. So far, apart from that screen bug, no issues. Out of the box, totally fine. I would put that screen issue down to just a loose cable because it stopped as soon as I fiddled with them. For those who don't know, when we started the machine, the screen was flashing, and I thought, oh no, it's bricked, but I think it was just slightly loose ribbon cable. It's not as quiet as some other printers I've tested. It's not running like super quiet stepper drivers, but it's reasonable. I don't know if I could work in the same room with it, but it's not overpoweringly loud with a fan noise, which is nice, compared to some other printers I've recently tested, so that's good. So let's just shift them over. Just give me 1 sec, and then we'll reconvene. I'll just mute the microphone because I'm going to move it. All right, how's that? Okay, what did I miss? What's my take on Prusa's article and call for discussion around open source? My take is it's complicated. I'm going to need more time to process that question. It's really difficult because I do believe design innovation should be protected, but it shouldn't be done in a way that stifles the growth of the industry. And I know that's a contradiction in terms, right? Like patents protect innovation yet slow down innovation. But if companies can't protect what they put their money into, because R&D is expensive, then they'll just stop innovating. And that's what we saw with the race to the bottom with the Ender 3. You know, Ender 3 was open sourced, and then everyone made cheaper Ender 3s, and then they started catching fire, and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, it's complicated. I do believe they should protect some stuff, but stuff that they've derived from other people, obviously, should be remain open source. But we're not entitled to their work. Like, we're not entitled to the R&D of Prusa Research just as much as we're not entitled to any R&D from other companies. Like, they can release what they want, and they can hold on to stuff that they've put money into. But in terms of their image, it comes from the RepRap community, which was, the whole point was open source, right? So it's a really sticky point. And I'm not sure how they're going to navigate it. But I'm just going to start a print on him. I've just gendered the printer. No, stop. I just hit print again by accident. There we go. Oh, Okay, that's going to be annoying. I keep thinking hitting the button is home, but it's on reprint. Alright, we're doing the alpaca. Yeah, I agree, Beef Ingot. The patent system does need an overhaul. I looked into protecting some stuff because there's another company in another country calling themselves Maker's Muse, and they're in the maker space thing. And look, I'm not interested in trying to go after people, but it was very clearly done in a way to sort of trick people into thinking they were me or related to my brand. And they even used one of my videos in one of their videos. Anyway, but to get something protected, like I'm talking about trademark, but patenting's very similar. You got to do it in every major country, and even then, you got to assume the country is going to respect it. And then, if someone violates the protections, you have to go after them. There's no like automatic thing. Copyright is almost easier than trademarks or patents, because copyright you can kind of just like automatically claim ownership. Again, depending on the country. But yeah, it's really out of date and it's so expensive, like thousands upon thousands of dollars. And I'm like, my protection, and I'll be completely honest, this is how the discussion went, is you guys. Like, every time someone uploads my video and tries to use my brand, you guys let me know. Like, I'll get a message being like, oh, hey, Angus, are you aware that this person's doing this? Or this and this? Like, I cannot thank you enough for actively looking out for me and being like, hey, take this down, you're not him, blah, blah, blah. Like, on Reddit, for example, there's some of my interesting rolling shapes often gets uploaded because, you know, it's interesting and they'll put some music to it and try to make a viral video. And there'll be someone inevitably saying, like, this is from Maker's Muse, you should credit him. Which is awesome. I can't thank you enough for that. But the whole paid system of protections is really archaic, and it can be easily misused if you got enough money. That's it. It's like it's a pay-to-play thing. So I completely agree. We need something better, and we need something better than open source as well, because as Joe said in his article, it's not really designed for hardware. It was for software initially, and we've kind of mushed it into this hardware thing that doesn't really make sense. That confirming the print thing is going to really piss me off. I'm so used to it just printing. I'm sorry. Yes, I did. Thank you, Benjamin. I saw your message first. Alright. Alright, that's printing. Alright, we are good. I just need some water, because I've been talking a lot. Anyway, chill for a bit. This is your chance to ask me any questions you have. I'd love to answer them for you. I don't live stream often. As you can see, I am a bit of a chaotic individual these days. There's stuff everywhere, but I've been really enjoying getting out the review content and the tutorials, getting back to basics. You know, that's what I'm focusing on. So I'm absolutely here to answer any questions you might have. Well, this thing does its thing. I'm printing the llama, by the way. Jim, do I think the price of the Mark IV will drop after a year or so? I don't think so. The whole landscape for parts has changed significantly. They're not as expensive, and the part shortages isn't as bad as it was, but things have gotten more expensive. Inflation's out of control, so I don't think they can price any lower than it currently is. I think it's going to be what it is, if not get more expensive, to be honest, because it's very clear that Bamboo Lab with the X1C, they might even be taking a loss on that printer, to be honest. The price point for it is ridiculous, and they're doing it to get market share, no question. So I think if anything, stuff will get more expensive. I'm sorry. Has 3D printing ruined any of my relationships? No. I used to run my printer in my bedroom, but that just affected me. Do I have any recommendations for software consumer level that will assist with designing robot combat internals? I'm on the fence for designing robots in CAD because often you have physical, like I've got parts for robots on my desk right now. I'm making another little one, and you need to physically see them in space to be like, oh, this is this shape and how do I move it? So I would often put them on a piece of paper, like a grid notebook, trace around it, and then put that into CAD. So the CAD is almost secondary. Like, you don't even really need it for a lot of robot design. However, having said that, I use Fusion because that's what I know and that's what I've used for years. But I used to use Rhino because it's not like parametric like Fusion, but you can just design objects and then move them around. So you can bring in a pre-made model for a motor, for example, and just put it on place and then sort of move around in 3D space like I do on, in person, and design the robot around that. Now, you don't get the freedom of being fully parametric and the complexities you can do in Fusion as a result, but it's a lot quicker. So, yeah, it's worth checking out, Rhino. That's a pretty cool bit of software. But yeah, these days I use Fusion just because it's what I've got. I pay for it, and I'm pretty good at it. So I'll do that. But I often will just use, pen and paper, to be honest, for a lot of my parts. Did the nozzle poke a small hole in the bed in the front left corner? I will check. You know what? It has left a small mark. I don't know if it's just PLA stuck onto the PEI, but there's a tiny... It's very small. There's a smallest mark there. I'm sure over time it will get bigger, but again, that's sort of where it homes. It's like when you do the purge line on your printer bed. Eventually that purge line gets worn through. Do you print in that area? Probably not. Didn't Rhino disappear? I have no idea. I'm talking about like a long time ago. 2006. I was CADing robots when I should have been paying attention in high school because school was boring and robots were more interesting. Need to find or create a library for robotics. Try GrabCAD. GrabCAD's a really good source for 3D models of components. So I'm not saying there'll be everything you need, but you'll probably find like the N20 little gear motors. You'll probably find, NEMA 17 step motors, standard gearboxes. A lot of the guys who do combat robots will share their models on there. I have still not been able to decipher the mystery of the clearance castle. How many have already been able to? About 20 have solved that. But don't rush, because I haven't done the next step. So I'm overdue with that. But yes, about 20 have figured it out. But I'm not talking about it anymore. What do I think about using Blender versus Fusion? Two very different things. It's like apples and oranges. Blender is incredible for if you've got like sculpting skill, or you like to draw, like to design, like using faces, so triangles or quads. You can design objects like that for game engines and stuff like that. Their sculpting environment's incredible. I'm not very good at that. I'm not artistic. I need a sketch that I can dimension, and then I can extrude or revolve or something. So that's why I use parametric software like Fusion. But Fusion also has a push-pull mode, which is their form workspace. And you can do stuff like this, right? So like that's designed in Fusion 360, and you wouldn't think it is, but that's because it's based off a form that's then been parametrically edited, right? So yeah, whichever resonates with you most, you can use. And they're both very powerful. I wouldn't think you'd find any limits in either of those bits of software. Flying Boar, thank you so much. Thank you for getting to this hobby. I just built a Voron 2.4. Very nice. Any thoughts on the Voron? I love it. Huge upgrade over my Prusa Mini. Yeah. Um, it is a weird niche. Actually, like a Voron is like, it's almost like building like a hopped up 3D printer, almost like how people would get remote control cars and hop them up to be as good as possible using like upgrade parts, carbon fiber parts, anodized aluminum parts to make something that's genuinely really good, but also like in itself a hobby. Like you can spend hours just upgrading one aspect of it. But the Voron is what's like is the base, the bedrock for what all these fast Core XY printers that are coming out are based on. And the Voron, it's a community project. So I think they're really cool. I just don't have time to spend that much time on a 3D printer. Because I always come from the angle of I use 3D printers as a tool to print things. I don't see 3D printers as the hobby itself to spend time on. And that's just my angle. But a lot of people love the fact they can tinker with their 3D printers. And the Voron is like the ultimate level of that. To tinker on a machine that actually genuinely prints fast, and you can make it print even faster. The stuff I've seen with carbon fiber like rods, skeletonized beams for lightweight, and someone shared a photo that was even a linear rail that had been pocketed. Like they'd gone to the linear rail, it's steel, and they'd pocketed little like triangle pockets to make it lighter weight for that moving axis. Like the stuff the Voron community is doing is just insane. And I think it's really cool. It's a whole nother world than just printing for printing's sake. But absolutely, if you enjoy it, then it's going to be huge amounts of... the stuff you'll learn working on that is hugely valuable for working in any sort of 3D printing field. Daniel, Angus, you have a lot of printers. What's your go-to everyday machine? Funny fact, I actually don't have a lot of printers because I give them away. And don't ask for one because that's not how it works. I will go to locations, and usually it's friends of friends who are like designing stuff, and I'll be like, hey, do you want this? And then I'll give them away. So currently, my go-to machine is the X1 Carbon because it's working very well. But I'll also use like machines I'm reviewing, so I'll be testing the Mark IV a lot. And I've also been using the Mark III S Plus because that's also part of this comparison. But yeah, unfortunately, yeah, the X1 Carbon's been my go-to lately. I have it loaded with ABS, and I don't even remember it's ABS because, like, you know, this is a random part I did last night, like 5 minutes or something, and I'll just hit go, and by the time I remember I sent a print, it's already done. But of course, there's trade-offs, like if it breaks, I don't know what I'm going to do. But while it works, it's pretty good. Artillery is launching new printers this year. Do I have any expectations? I do hope that they continue to improve them. I've always been a fan of the Sidewinder printers, the X1 and the X2, for big format printing that's fairly reliable. So yeah, I'm pretty keen. I don't like the smaller ones. I just like the Sidewinder X1 and X2 are like really priced well, large format i3s. For sticking a 0.6 or 0.8mm nozzle on and printing big, fast stuff. I think they're awesome for that. Do I have any experience with OpenSCAD? I'm not good at code. I mean, I say that, I could probably figure it out. I haven't really played with it for a very long time. But if you like code and you like 3D modeling, it's the best of both worlds, right? So it's definitely worth checking out. But for me, not my thing, unfortunately. Can I play with something on the keyboards? Not really, because unfortunately the sound card, I say sound card, it's like this like 16-in sound thing is used for this software, and I can't use it for multiple things at once. It like the software will take ownership of that sound card, and to get low latency, it has to do that. So if I fire Cubase up, it'll stuff the stream up, and I haven't really figured a way around that. I'd have to have two computers to stream. None of the keyboards have a speaker built in. They all go through the computer via their audio outs. But I'll figure out one day how to do it. Or maybe I'll have a laptop that's streaming and then I'll connect it to this somehow. And I'll figure it out. With the panels, is the P1P reliable for carbon fiber? I wouldn't recommend it because you'd have to upgrade the nozzle. I'm pretty sure it doesn't come with a hardened nozzle. Could be wrong. But if you did change that and you're prepared for some wear in the extruder, because carbon fiber is very abrasive, then, because I don't think it has a hardened gears either, then yeah, there's no reason you couldn't print carbon fiber with the P1P. It's the same mechanical design as the X1C. Just doesn't have the hardened components. What do I think about the printables reward system? I think it's really clever. I think it's been pivotal in printables leapfrogging the other file repositories for users and attracting designers to share their designs to get rewards. I think it was a very smart move by Prusa Research. And it's really started to make it leapfrog all the others, because we saw Thingiverse kind of fall away. Now they're, that Ultimaker is part of MakerBot. I don't know, they might revive it. They're trying to. And My Manufactory became like the go-to place for paid files and mostly D&D models. So that's awesome. No issue there. So Printables is kind of taking the other community side of things, and I think they're doing a really good job with their reward system, because I think you can get a 3D printer if you get enough downloads. You can get a 3D printer. Just in case anyone's wondering why I don't use those file repositories, it's because I already have a whole system for selling digital models and giving and so people can download them for free, and it's part of my business plan that you sort of get part of this ecosystem, and you might be like, oh, that's a free file, maybe I'll buy this, and that supports the channel and helps me keep doing this sort of thing. So I have my own ecosystem, but I know that's not what most people would do. So yeah, I think by having a incentive is really, really quite clever. It's early, but do you think the Mark IV will compete with the X1C? We'll see. They'll have to speed things up a lot. And yeah, it's very pretty. It's definitely not at all like the Mark III's Plus, is it? Like, visually it looks the same, but it's completely different. But if the print quality is reliable, if they can speed it up a bit, then yeah, it's a solid contender, absolutely. And it looks so good. It looks much nicer than just a box. But obviously, you need that box for high temperature materials. So once you add the enclosure to it, the price point really does start to skyrocket. Fusionable, you mentioned that you studied industrial design. At what point throughout your studies did you choose a 3D printing direction, and what or who influenced this decision? Never really thought about that before. So I studied at UTS, University of Technology in Sydney, and the degree was really good, actually. It doesn't exist anymore. They've changed it to a 3-year degree, but originally it was 4 years with honors. And it was structured in such a way that we learned SolidWorks, which is you're an engineer, you learn SolidWorks, right? So we learned industry standard software. And there was stuff I wasn't good at, like sketching and things like that. But they were trying to churn out industrial designers that had a knowledge of the manufacturing process. I also happened to be more interested in the manufacturing process than the design stuff. So I was going in building robots in their workshop because they had a massive lathe. They had a huge mill, not a CNC mill, but a nice big turret mill. And I'd go in during the uni holidays to build robots. So I got to know the guys a lot, and I got to know the manufacturing lab they had there with the 3D printers, laser cutters and stuff. And I was building the robots, so I wanted to use those technologies to build my robots. And I just kind of fell into it because I could CAD really well, but I couldn't make stuff very well. I was just, my dexterity, I don't know, impatience. I just didn't like to make stuff by hand. I'd rather design it and then get it made. So 3D printing was the perfect way to do that for 3D stuff. Laser cutting was great too for 2D stuff. So I think second year I got some parts done on the Stratasys machines, And then I was like, oh, I gotta check this out. And just at that point, the RepRap project was becoming widely known. And I think it's because a few like key patents at the time had expired, allowing it's so fuzzy, but like allowing the project to expand more than it already had. And then like the whole 3D printed guns thing happened, and then it was in the media everywhere. But what I was interested in was democratizing 3D printing, making it so it could be in anyone's home. And that's why I sort of did my dissertation on 3D printing in a domestic environment. It's why I made a cupcake icing 3D printer, because I was thinking, how could this technology be used for something completely different? Nothing like that existed at the time. And here we are with like the Cocoa Press doing print-in-place chocolate models, which blows my mind. But yeah, that's sort of why I started focusing on it. And then afterwards, because I was obviously knowledgeable in 3D printing and design, and it was very hype at the time, I got a lot of apprenticeships at companies that came and went. Most of them went broke, but I learnt from them. And then eventually, you guys know the story, I started making YouTube videos about it. And here I am. Will I be doing a review on the Creality K1? I'm not sure. They've offered, and it looks... I'm not interested in being a beta tester, and I sort of want to see what other people think of it first. And it looks very much like the Bambu Lab X1 carbon, like almost a carbon copy. So we'll see. The company's not exactly in my good books for a lot of things, but at the same time, if it's a good printer, then it should be shared, and you guys should be aware of it. So I might have to suck up my ego a bit and accept that one. Throwback to when a RepRap Mendel cost like 1,200 US. Yeah, I bought a ramps kit. So ramps 1.4, I think, which was like the Arduino Mega, the ramps board, no step motors or anything, for 500 Australian, which was cheap for a ramps back then that you didn't have to make yourself. And I salvaged the stepper motors from my cupcake icing printer from medical waste. So there was this machine that had these stepper motors to move, I think it was for like some sort of liquid management system. It wasn't like medical waste. It was a medical instrument, like a complex electromechanical thing that had these valves and stuff in it, and these moving axes of essentially stepper motors. And I like ripped them out because some guy dumped them at the makerspace because he found them like in the bin. And I built this prototype out of just crap. How times have changed. The K1's completely different. The screen's at the bottom, not the top. Yeah, that makes it much more usable. Yeah, beef ingot. So I do want to touch on that. Companies at the moment are desperate to get that edge on the 3D printing market, because the hype's out, right? Everyone wants a faster 3D printer now. We're not racing to the bottom as such like we used to. We're racing to like the best, fastest printer at a good price point. And I am getting messages. They're usually not from the companies. They're usually from these really crappy third-party associates that I'm convinced have a bounty out for which influencer they get to review and promote the machine that they're trying to promote. So I'm not going to name the companies because I'm getting it from pretty much everyone. And it's not so much the companies, it's these other marketing agencies. But they are offering a lot of money for dedicated reviews and videos. And you can't pay for a review. It's just not how it works. Like, I have never taken cash for a review, ever. I've never even had a sponsorship with a 3D printer before. Like, every review ever has been completely, like, okay, you have to cover the price of the printer and the shipping. That's it. You have no say in what I say about your printer. I will review it as received. That's it. But the fact they are offering money for reviews tells me that some people might be taking that money, or they're just super desperate. I don't know. But a lot of companies right now are just super, super desperate to get their name out there. Like, really desperate. And whatever, they can try as much as they want. I will review machines as I see fit. Like many of you know, I held off on the Bamboo Lab printer because I use Kickstarter. Because I don't agree with companies who are established using Kickstarter. Like Creator using Kickstarter, not my problem. I'm not going to talk about it. So, yeah, it's really interesting. Anyway, I promise to you guys, I will be as unbiased as possible. Yeah, I'm never taking money for a review. Screw that. It's not worth it. Like, it's no way am I throwing my reputation down the drain for some stupid company. Nero has spoken. End the stream. Where is Nero? Bigger is better. A bigger number. You start getting companies being like the N5000, the N10000. Do I still have a Mark V review coming? That was like 2 weeks ago. It's in the videos. I already reviewed it. Anyway, if you have any more questions, fire them away. And otherwise, I'm probably going to finish up and get some breakfast. But yeah, it's been a crazy year so far in the 3D printing space. Absolutely hyper. Do I have an XL pre-ordered? No, I don't. That's a very specialty 3D printer and quite expensive. And I tend to print one material only. I want printers that just work, send them away, come back to a part, the kind of thing. The XL is much more hardcore. So no, I probably won't even review it if it's offered, just because it sort of goes, it's the next step. It's like prosumer, then it's like prosumer. It's a little bit out of the price point of a lot of people when I say 3D printing should be accessible. He's so very biased about being unbiased. What are your thoughts on tinkerers gearing their hobby towards side hustle, designing niche things to sell on Etsy and the like? That's a really good question. I think it's a really good way to, I think some people, if they have the entrepreneurial edge, like they just got that sort of bone in their body, I think it's a really good way to monetize a hobby. So if you can find something that's interesting, that you like to design, and there's a market for it and people want to buy it, and you've got that edge and that it can't be easily copied because people will try to copy you, absolutely. I think there's absolutely, it's a viable path, but it takes time. Like, a side hustle is actually like a second full-time job, in that the amount of time you spend designing, answering questions, shipping out products, dealing with disputes, it can be full on. It's why I don't have any physical products. I only sell digital products, because if someone says, hey, I don't like this, it's not what I expected, I can just refund them with no issue on my end. But if I send something that's cost me, I don't know, 10 hours of 3D printing time, a few hundred grams of filament, whatever, and shipping, and they're like, oh, I don't like it, I want a refund, it's not what I expected, or whatever. I don't want to deal with that. I've done that before, and I'm just not interested in doing that. So in terms of side hustles, it's really, really actually quite full-time to have one. I recommend, and I've always recommended this, is like education in itself is valuable. So it's why I tend to do educational products that are sold, because then they're digital, they're educational, people can get what they want out of them, and it's like a niche I can control because it's education. I don't know how to describe it. I'm just ranting. I don't like physical products, so that's my thing about Etsy. But yeah, like, you've stumped me a bit. If someone wants to do that, then totally fine, but it shouldn't be the reason they're getting into 3D printing. Is that okay? Is that reasonable? Yeah, there you go. Jack Black nailed what I was trying to say. It can ruin the joy of the hobby. There you go. Yeah. When you monetize a hobby, it can make it less fun. That absolutely. Yeah. That was a much more eloquent way to say it. So I would be cautious of doing that. Yeah, so despite all the stuff I said about Prusa and open source backtracking, I'm actually slightly afraid of the whole digital only with the idea you can't protect yourself. Yes, absolutely. So again, going back to the whole trademarking, patenting thing, in my ebook, I literally have a section about it, which is like, I literally I quoted Serenity, Mr. Universe, you can't stop the signal. Because once something's out there, then it's out there. Like, if you have an STL file, whatever, someone can share it with as many people as they want. It's a digital object, right? It doesn't exist in reality. They can copy it and replicate it wherever they want. So my solution to that is to constantly make new things and maintain authority over those things. So for example, from like years ago, I've got files that people have been so slighted that I've charged money for digital files. They've like remodeled them themselves. That's totally fine. I have no issue with that at all. But if it comes to people sharing them with their friends and whatever, I can't control that. And I've made peace with that because I just keep making new things that people will come across. And because I'm making content that's useful and educational, there's sort of that reciprocity thing going on where a few bucks, to help you out, do that sort of thing, they're less likely to go try to find it for free elsewhere or beg their friends for it. That's kind of what I've landed on and how I make peace with the fact that people can copy digital files because you can't control it at all. Yeah, license to drive. Funny how you don't like dealing with physical products to sell, but you like using and reviewing devices that create physical products. Yes, but the catch is they create physical products from digital products. So I want to make sure people get good machines that can recreate digital things in reality, but I don't want to be the one making them physical and sending them out. It's an important distinction. Is it still worth buying a Prusa Mark 3S Plus? Oh, that's a hard sell now. Not unless it's a lot cheaper. Yeah, there's so much different on this machine. I would say it's a pretty hard sell. Yeah, Dismantler saying, I was working 70 hours a week and turned my side hustle into full-time. Comes down to how badly you want it and how big a market is. Yeah, look, absolutely. And some of that comes down to luck. Part of the reason I was doing videos to start with is because I wanted to share what I was learning, because I was and still am so passionate about digital manufacturing technologies. Not just 3D printing, but the fact you can turn something digital into something physical, almost autonomously, like it does it on its own. That's just amazing, right? So I wanted to share that, and at the time I was working in a physical studio, and that was draining. Dealing with clients was exhausting. Dealing with a boss was exhausting. All that sort of stuff. And I'd get the same questions every day. So when I was I think the best side hustles are spawned from a really you reach your limit with a physical job or another job, and it sort of that other job feeds onto that side hustle, and you can use it to grow it. So I was at this physical studio. I was getting asked questions like, what do you think about this, or how's this printer, blah blah blah. So I would use those questions as inspiration to then make video content about how to design this, or this is a review of this 3D printer. I would have some of the great customers I worked with would have machines they'd lend to me to then review for my channel, because they were like, hey, you can borrow it for the weekend, that's fine. Or I'd go into the studio on the weekend to then review a machine we had for sale. And it was actually reciprocal as well, because I'd say come into the studio if you want to buy it. But eventually got to the point where companies were just sending me stuff separate to that. And I just remember the pivotal point of it going from a side hustle to a job, very distinctive, was because the first company to ever send me a product to review was Shining 3D, and it was a 3D scanner. It wasn't even a 3D printer, and it got delivered to the studio, and my boss was like, "Oh, what's that? We didn't order that." And I'm like, "Nah, that's for me." It's like this $500 3D scanner. And I'm like, "No, that's for me. It's for my videos." And he's like, "Oh." Little did he know what was starting. And that was like the pivotal point of it going from just a fun thing, which, look, I would still be making videos even if I still had a job, because I just love this, right? But it went from it being that to actually maybe this has something in it. And then I went to focus on it a lot more. And yeah, I was doing long hours. I was going to work, coming back, editing videos, going to bed at midnight, waking up at 7, going to work, rinse and repeat, uploading at night, because if I uploaded during the day while we were trying to use the internet, you couldn't use it because the internet speed was so slow. Cool. Anyway, that's a little bit more about me. Is the bamboo a viable option if you're exclusively using it offline? Not really. Their LAN mode works, but it's not the best. So, yeah, that's the only sticking point with the bamboo and any cloud ecosystem printer, is you kind of have to be part of their ecosystem. It does work offline. Like, I used mine on LAN mode for ages because I didn't bother making an account. I was like, I'm not making an account. But it does limit you. You don't get as much features. So, yeah, you can, but you will be cutting out a lot of feature options if you don't use their cloud stuff. Ivan, do I own a CNC machine? No, I don't, because a good CNC is quite expensive and takes up a lot of space. But I know a lot of people with CNC machines, so I often travel up to Sydney to a machine shop. One of my good mates has like a plasma cutter, proper machining center, all sort of good stuff, and he'll help me out with that sort of thing. Huge full sheet router, love it. So I do have a lot of options to use those tools. Sweet. Does the Prusa MK4 need to be online? No, not at all. It's just printing off the USB stick, and you can just use that like the old printers. It's just the storage media. Do I use my X1C P1P regularly as a preference? I mentioned it before, but my current go-to printer is the X1C. But my P1P is currently broken because I moved it quite roughly, and I think something's happened to one of the bed force sensors. It's got an alert on there. I just haven't had time to investigate it. It might just be a little bit loose. It might need a new one. It might need to be glued back in place. I don't know. But it's complaining. So that's the one issue with all the bamboo light printers, is if something goes wrong, they're so complex, it's hard to know exactly what's wrong. It is lunchtime. Yeah, I think I gotta go for lunch now. I haven't even had breakfast. Yeah. And yeah, Justin's right. You do need to connect the Bamboo Lab printers online for the first setup. Absolutely. Cool. Alright, guys. I'm going to end it there. Yeah, thanks for hanging out. And I'll post on Twitter what this result is. It's printing fine, but it's printing really slowly. So I'm definitely going to tweak some of their profiles to see how fast I can go. And then look out for a review on the Mark IV probably in a month's time, because I really like to test these machines thoroughly. And yeah, I want to make sure that there's no other unexpected issues, like the screen flickering. But that was totally fine. It's just a loose power cable, loose ribbon cable, no problem there. So have an awesome day or night or whatever. And thanks for hanging out. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you guys